Welcome to the Community Hotline, a place for everyday community members to be heard and share their personal experiences with the youth. I'm your host, Bob Fang, and today we have Mr. Special, Joseph Loeb. How you doing there?
I'm fine, Bob. Thank you so much for having me. It's a delightful time to be here.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us two things about yourself?
I grew up in Los Angeles, um, and I've had an adventurous life, a happy childhood, and I'm a retired professor of biology, a research professor.
Love it. Okay. Some facts I definitely didn't know.
I race Porsche. I race Porsche sports cars, and I learned to fly an airplane.
Okay. A daring, adventurous soul. I like that. Let's get into the first question of the day. We're going to go super deep. Tell us, what are three defining moments in your life and how did they impact you?
I was adopted as a kid by a Jewish family, and it impacted me because it gave me every opportunity that I probably wouldn't have had growing up in South Central Los Angeles. So I was very fortunate and able to go to school and do a lot of different things. So that was one thing. One of the things that impacted me, um, I think, was the time when I was flying an airplane and the engine cut off. It's interesting the prayers you pray when the engine cut off. You know, because, well, what happened, you don't know this, but when I was married, my wife's cousin was Morgan Freeman, the actor. And
Okay.
so he and I became friends, and he lived in Mississippi. And so when I would travel, I'd go, and he started taking flying lessons when he turned 65. And so I started taking lessons as well, since, it's kind of like the childhood dream, you're going to learn to fly a plane. So why not, So I started flying the plane and, would travel and fly different places and take lessons. And even though I lived in Los Angeles, when I went to Mississippi, I would take lessons there, and I was taking lessons with Morgan's instructor, and we, when you fly a plane, you have to have so many night hours, in order for your instruction to go through. You have your daytime, what they call VFR, visual flight rules, but then you got to have so many night hours just to make sure that you can fly the plane at night. And so I was taking my lessons, and we were in Mississippi, and we're at about 3,000 feet, and the engine cut off. It started windmilling, and it's interesting, because I mean, obviously I hadn't experienced it before, and then my instructor says, "Gee, this has never happened to me before." And so, what you do is you got a choice. You can start panicking and acting a fool and all of that, but you know there's a checklist in an airplane. So you go through the checklist for what kind of stuff happened. Okay, first you check the fuel and see if it's in another tank. You switch the tanks and do that, and finally, when you find out that there's nothing else it's going to do, you start looking for a place to sit it down. And so we were at 3,000 feet, and I was practicing my S turns, And in a single engine plane, you lose 500 feet per minute with the engine cut off. So that means within about 5 minutes, you're going to be on the ground one way or another. So either you're going to be on the ground in a good way where you can walk away from it, or that you'll have concerns. And so we landed on Highway 49. It got in the newspaper, and we landed on Highway 49 at night, and got the plane off and got off to the side a little bit. And after we got out, a lady came and hit the plane and knocked it into the cotton field. But I don't really blame her, because who expects a plane to be on the highway at night? So, but that was an interesting experience. So yeah, and that was impactful. I think that's two. So my third one was, I think, when I was in South Africa, and I remember being in South Africa, and we visited where Nelson Mandela was stayed in Robben Island. And the interesting thing about being in Cape Town, it's where the Indian and the Atlantic Oceans come together. And so what you see is this boiling effect of the two oceans coming together. And I thought that was just exciting, just a thrilling thing to see in Cape Town. And so, and I think you asked for three, but I have one more, if you don't mind.
Go for it. Go for it. The stage is yours.
I was in Nigeria, in Abuja, and I went on a mission. We set up computer labs for AIDS or orphanages. I worked with that as a missionary. And one of the things that happened at the Hilton in Africa, in Nigeria, is a big, huge complex. And so we were in the pool. It was about 9 o'clock at night. It was hot and everything. And as happens in Africa, sometimes the lights go out. You know, it might happen in Malaysia as well, right? Lights go out in the entire complex, and it's pitch black. We're in the pool. And it happened to be the time I went when Mars was close to the Earth, and you could see Mars with the naked eye. And so, because I was in Africa, and because it was so dark, and because I was in the pool and the lights went out, I could look up and I could see the red planet. And that was so cool. So yeah, those are the kind of things that I remember.
I like that. I like that. Okay, so just to recap, we have your childhood being adopted by a Jewish family. We have your plane going out and having to land a engineless plane, and then visiting South Africa with the two oceans meeting. And then the last one is when you were in Nigeria and you got to see Mars with the naked eye. Impactful moments. Very impactful moments. Let's get into the first topic of the day. Let's just go right into it. Let's talk about education. Um, since you were a biology professor, um, who were you in high school?
I went to Manual Arts High School, and I enjoyed it. I didn't really study as much biology then. I was more in education. And then I went on to community college. And it wasn't until I started my second set of knowledge after graduate school that I decided to do research. And that's how I became interested in biology. And my biology, actually, I'm an appointed research professor in the Department of Biological Science in the School of Biology at University of Memphis. And I served there for 5 or 6 years. And so that's my background, primarily growing crops, aquaponics, aeroponics, and hydroponics. In terms of that piece. But I think the biggest thing is knowing how to read and then learning to love how to read and then trying to read as much as you can so that you can understand different things and people who don't agree with you.
Mm, interesting. So you went to high school in LA,
Yes.
and then what year was that, if you don't mind me asking?
1970.
What was that like? High school in LA, 1970.
It I was on the swim team. So I liked it. I mean, it was fairly quiet, and it wasn't as chaotic as I guess high schools and things like that now. But it just seemed normal to me. I was on the swim team in high school, and when I went to junior college, I started learning to play tennis. So yeah,
Very interesting. And then did you when you mentioned that you were adopted, did you have siblings growing up, or did they just adopt just one only child growing up?
I had siblings growing up. There were four of us,
Blood siblings or adopted siblings?
half siblings. Yeah. So they were from my from my biological mother. I had siblings that way. And then in the other family, there were two boys and a girl.
What was it? What was it like growing up in like a Jewish family?
It was interesting. It's a
Tell some
nice
more
place.
story.
Well, I think the basic thing is just learning to be people and the patience and the education that goes along with it. So you know, I just like the closeness, and so it was interesting environment.
Did you ever have? I know I talk to a lot of kids, and they often have trouble communicating with their parents when they're in high school. Um, what was your relationship with your adoptive parents like? Or
It was good. You know, um, LA is such a big place until everybody's kind of like on their own. I remember being a kid and you could ride your bicycle around all kinds of places, and then wouldn't get in trouble. And as long as you were, our rule was that you had to be home before dark. When the street lights come on, you better be in the house. But yeah, we were in, I guess, near the Crenshaw area in LA. When I was a kid, I grew up in that area. I went to Manual Arts High School. Crenshaw High School had just opened, but I didn't go there. But
interesting. What would you say to the kids, who don't like to read? How do kids find the passion for reading?
I think it has to be something that is kind of caught. And maybe the next thing might be is we have a lot of audiobooks now. And I think that's a different way of learning. There are different learning styles. And some children learn better with maybe audiobooks as a way of introducing them and the ability to share how much you care and to share your passion with reading. They kind of catch it.
Mm,
When you're impressionable, people can impress upon you. And so if you begin to teach a love for books, then they'll kind of catch that. You make an opportunity for them to hear an audiobook and it's something that they're interested in, they can kind of catch that. There are so many things competing for our kids' attention now until it's it's a challenge to get them to understand anything that sits still because of the stimulation that's happening.
how do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on that?
I feel that it's a reality, and that unless you take time to be still, um, you will be driven into doing something else. I
Mm.
mean, it's just like we got something else for you to do, even if you want to be still. Come do something else. It just it's like being in Vegas, a 24-hour city, right? Lights are always on. And I think that's really one of the challenges that our young people have to deal with. They may just be tired. They just may be overstimulated and tired of running from all of this stuff that seems madness. You know, what did
You,
somebody say about you online, or what to do to keep them from saying something about you online? How do you deal with that? I mean, who are your friends? Who's not your friend? Who did you respond to? Who you didn't respond to? You know, our kids need a break.
do you have kids of your own?
They're all grown, praise God.
How many kids do you have?
Two boys and a girl.
And what was it like raising two boys and a girl? Any
Well,
education?
it was
Biggest
like
challenges?
it. Well, I have two boys, so my first son went to USC. He followed me. He went to USC as well, and he got a degree in English. And then he went to Howard University Graduate School in theology. My second son, Chris, is actually my adopted son. His mother had bone cancer when he was 11 or so, and she brought him and asked me if I would uh, raise her son, if I would finish raising her son, let him have a good life. And I did. What could I say? She had two children, and one went with a lady, and another one um, you know, went with us because she asked it. And he went to Duquesne University, got his undergrad, and then he got his graduate, his master's in education from Duquesne University as well, and he teaches third grade math in DC. So he's a math science teacher. I'm very happy about it. And our daughter is a record producer. She does gospel music, and so she's been working in that genre. She's my daughter by marriage. When I married my wife, she had a daughter, and so that's my daughter, and I helped raise her. So those are my children, and I'm all very proud of them.
Of that. What were the biggest challenges, being a father?
Worry, you know, it's. I heard a discussion one time. A guy said it's like children are like these little people running around with your faces on them and your heart running around outside.
24/7 worry.
you know, but the joy of them is not to be compared.
Of that. For the education part, just finishing up. What was it like? Was it scary? Trying to learn something new at 65, trying to be a pilot, or what was that process like for you?
It was fun, because I'm a techie, So techie, one of the things about technology is that you're always learning. It's always something new. It's always a different way. I mean, it's always a different version. I mean, we go back to DOS and Windows, like Windows, I guess Windows 3.0, and then Windows 97 and 95 and all of that stuff. And so now we got Windows 30 or whatever it is now. But, I attended a lot of conferences, and my hobby was artificial intelligence. So I used to do that, and just in terms of understanding it. But this is an interesting time.
What are some things that you feel like kids should look out for the future?
I think the biggest thing is you have to define what does it mean to be human. We have so many things that are dehumanizing us. And if you don't understand how that works, you could be end up trapped in somebody else's vision for you and not your vision for you.
Personal story?
Uh, my personal story is how I got into writing my book. The first one was that when I was in LA, we developed computer labs for kids. And Bob, this is something you can check out, have your students check out, and then you can get back to me on it. Um, I am the father of computer technology in terms of community technology in America. I'll say it again. The father of community technology in America. And I say that because our team, Breakaway Technologies, we built 200 computer labs for other organizations between 97 and 2001. So almost nobody else has done that. But I'd like you to, maybe this is a way of putting the professor on the spot and see if there's somebody who did something more than that before then. So I think it would be fun. It's a good little. And the way I say that because some years ago when I was at the Department of Education, I was meeting with an assistant, a deputy director at the Department of Education, deputy secretary, and he said, "Did you know that you were the father of community technology in America?" I said, "Really?" I started in '92, and we built our labs. I started after the riots, Rodney King riots, and the main reason was that I didn't want to wake up 5, 10 years later and just say, somebody should have done something about how bad everything was, and and so I wanted to have my own story of saying, well, this is what I tried to do. And so I started Breakaway Technologies. And the idea was, how do you break away from unproductive behavior and connect to that which holds the promise of a bright future? And, I thought technology was an important key. And so that's where I started in that vein.
And then what if you were the catalyst, to all this AI? Mr. Joseph bringing the computers into the schools, and then that paved the way for the AIs to come into the schools, and now there's all this catalyst.
Well, I think you have a very good point. I really would feel guilty about it, except for the fact that it's going to happen anyway. you know, I'm sure there are other people who have more culpability than I do. But my thing was that I didn't want my community to be just left behind on this new digital era, and so I mean I started in '92. So after the riots, so the idea was I didn't want a whole bunch of regret about what I didn't do. you know,
Have you always been an individual person? Because you mentioned before the idea of being human and understanding what that means, so you're not, being persuaded to live in someone else's idea of how your life should be. Have you always lived your own path, or were you living in someone else's
you
idea?
know, I'm a preacher's kid. My grandfather was a minister, and for the most part, our Jewish family didn't really have a bunch of religious stuff. So I was able to. I went to the Baptist church, and I grew up in the church, and so it was fine for me. It was my understanding, And it was just the fact that I got involved in this, my first book, in terms of my compassion about it. What was a fairly simple question. A friend of mine said he was reading this book, and the book said that in the future, computers would declare themselves self-aware, and humans would give them rights as people. And I said, well, is that true? And what does the Bible say about it? And so it started a journey, my next level of education, so to speak. And because the simple idea is that obviously you can dismiss something like that when somebody, you don't care what somebody said. Okay, well, you have an opinion, I have an opinion. But the person who said it was Ray Kurzweil. And I don't know if you know who he is. Well, you can let your students look this up. This will be a great thing that they'll learn. Find Ray Kurzweil is chief engineer of Google, and he invented voice recognition. He's considered the Thomas Edison of our time. So if he says that we're going to go to singularity and we're going to give rights of humans to computers, I can't just dismiss it as some crazy guy, you know. And so it took me 20 years to answer, to respond properly to that.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of giving rights to AI and to robots in the future, that sounds a lot like compassion, empathy on the human side. Let's move on to love. Tell us, what is love?
Well, what's interesting about what you're saying is that I got into this whole Bible thing, but because of my love relationship with God. And my thought was, if we're giving rights of humans to computers, where does that leave people? And if that's true, then how can there be a God, and how could he possibly love me? And how can I possibly be in love with him if he's not real, if the computers are going to be in charge? It's an interesting conundrum. So the idea of what is love? Love is something where you focus on the other person. It's not about you, which is difficult for all of us. you know, Love puts the other person first, which is a challenge. And so I think that's where we're headed, to see what does this love actually mean? How does it actually work? And so that's why my book is called The Science of Love. Is there really a science to love? Does it really have any substance? And I would say, in the short answer, Bob, love is an anomaly. It's the anomaly of the universe.
Anomaly of the universe. Like that. How do you show love to others?
I think attention and caring and truthfulness. As one of the things about people who are adopted, they tend to be sometimes more fragile, and because they're sensitive about who might love them and who might not, and why they're worthy of love. You see, and I think we all struggle with, being able to say that I'm worthy of love. And kids need to be able to say that, because if you don't say that you're worthy of love and you don't feel that you're worthy, then you'll go around showing ways in which you're not. You see.
Personal story
mm, about love.
about you. Have you always felt worthy of love? You know, the topic that you were kind of trying to explain.
I think that I probably tolerated more things than I probably should have, searching for love. You know, saying that I think I was worthy or didn't think I was worthy, and trying to do things to see if I could earn it and so forth. But I, um, I follow the Joni Mitchell rule. Joni Mitchell, the singer, she said, "Only love is real. Everything else is an illusion."
Okay. Have you? Can you elaborate a little bit more on your own experience as being adopted? You know, and how I guess how you were trying to work for love, or how you you know, was there like an exact moment where you felt like you were worthy of love?
I don't think so. I don't know. I think it's just a process. We all ebb and flow. This is great this time. This is bad that time. And my book came to see. I wanted to see if God really loved me, and if He did, that He would have a response to the fact that the technology is going to take over and enslave everybody. And if God didn't have a response in the Bible about how that was all going to be okay, then it didn't really get to be God. you know, you don't get to be God if you don't know how stuff work.
Definitely. For 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 when you were, you know, was did you do you know the reason why your mom put you up for adoption?
Not really. It was. I was just fortunate. That's all I really know about it.
I know some kids who are adopted and they feel like, you know, they like you mentioned earlier that they the feelings of being unwanted and unloved. What would you say to those what would you say to those kids, you know?
I think that all kinds of things happen to everybody, and you're a lot. I think the easiest thing to do is to try to be somebody who not only is worthy of love, because some people, nothing you do will be enough for them, you know. But if you can be a fair person, a just person, and a caring person, that to me has got to be enough. And if it's not enough for other people, then okay, maybe that's not the ones you need to be with.
Who was your first love?
Hmm. I mean, other than some girl, I was married for 25 years. So, so obviously that's a level of commitment, right? I've only been married once, and I've been married once for 25 years. So I got a divorce, but hey, what can I say?
What
I
what
tried.
what happened? What happened?
I don't know, two people are different. And after a period of time, if you don't correct enough stuff or whatever, you know, the way I like to say it is that there's enough blame to go around, so I don't have to say, oh, she was this or whatever, enough blame to go around, and I'll take my part, and I'll, I'll leave it alone.
Any
What about you? Are you married?
no, I'm engaged though.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Any marriage tips?
Um, yes.
Top 3?
I'll give you a couple, just
Okay.
two. The first one is uh, what I consider the most important rule, and that is one fool at a time. That is that, you know how some days you get up and you just got a bad attitude? You just don't feel like cooperating. you know, you're acting foolish. You'll get over it tomorrow, but for right
Today.
now. So if you're acting like that and she's acting like that on one of her days, you're going to have to acquiesce and allow them to act, up on that day, and you save your day for another day. You'll get that later on, Bob. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, if you start to screaming and yelling, and she starts to screaming, somebody got to back down. So it's important to be the one to say, okay, I'm strong enough to let this go this time and take my turn another day. Now the other one, I got one more. And so the other one is, the good news is the two of you shall become one. The bad news is, which one of you is it going to be?
Personal story.
I think I told enough personal stories. I'll tell you, here's my last one. This one is the one I'm in now. So I just 5, 6 years ago, I was a senior at the senior center here in San Francisco. Have breakfast at the senior center, have lunch there, and play ping pong, whatever. And the young lady who takes your name down, you know, register you to have lunch or breakfast or whatever. Over a period of time, she smiled at me, you know, and then we went out into the art gallery and a few times and stuff. Way too young for me. I mean, she's a kid. And I had to say, well, gee, had to be something worthy of this smile, pretty girl smile at you, got to do something worthy. And so I went back to school. I mean, I started a program, and I got myself hired as a professor at the college, and started building these structures, and started, with my furniture and everything to use the wood waste from the forest, because I wanted to be worthwhile for this pretty girl who was smiling at me. You know, Basically, every building you see, for the most part, some guy built it to make some woman proud. It's different now than it used to be, you know, because there are more women architects and gay men or whatever. But the idea was that that's how you use it as a motivation. I mean, they asked this guy, well, why are you running the marathon? He said, well, my wife was proud of me. Yeah. So, so that's a personal, real story. The things I do now for my other students and help to change their life, and the stuff we make, the furniture and all that, because a pretty girl smiled at me and I wanted to be worthy of the smile.
Love that. Love that. That's an excellent story. What about divorce? Two tips on avoiding that, or if
About
it
what?
about divorce. Two tips on that.
I mean, it's a reality. I don't know what else to say about it. It's a reality that's painful. It's something you probably would rather not go through if you had the opportunity to go through it, but it's the reality that happens. So I yeah, I'm not free from not being on that list.
How long has it been?
About 10 years now.
Is it still painful, or has it gotten better, or how are you?
You know, I don't know. It's not as painful. I don't think about it as much, but I don't want to go back in no situation like that.
What's
I'm glad to be free.
some of the biggest fears? I know my biggest fear is the loss of my parents. What any advice on that, or how did you deal with that, or are your parents still around?
Well, my father died like I said, when I was a child, and my mother, like I said, when I was adopted and everything, I dealt with it. My friend said that when your mom dies, it's like you're being born again, because all the things you would have thought that, the care that you would have had that come from mom is no longer available. And you have to see the world anew. And so I thought that was interesting. My biggest thing is I'm committed to what I do. With both with my book and with what I do in terms of my design work and geometry, I'm committed to my lesson, and that is that it's possible to heal our land, but it requires love. It requires love of self. It requires love of others. I am primarily I'm a Christian, but I'm a Jewish Christian and also a Buckminster Fuller follower. You know Bucky Fuller? You heard of him? He invented a geodesic dome, those big domes that have the triangles all around. Yeah, geodesic dome. You can look it up later. But Buckminster Fuller was called the poet of geometry. What a cool title. you know. And his point was, he said that humans can either it's either utopia or oblivion, and those are our choices. That we have all the tools to have utopia, but if we make all the wrong choices, we'll have oblivion. There's enough for our needs, but not enough for everyone's greed.
Hey,
So my focus is how do we live in harmony with the universe, and how do we live in harmony with each other, and how do we do that as a structure. And so the primarily way I look at it is based on the Jewish narrative, which is do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your Lord. And what's interesting about it is that that fits across all the different spectrums. Any religion, there's no law in Buddhism or anywhere else about being fair in your function. In fact, we'd rather have it that way, or caring about the feeble, you know. And so those are the kinds of things that the kind of choices that we're facing now. The real issue is, what does it mean to be human? And whether or not this technology will steal your soul.
what is a soul?
We'll soon find out, won't we?
How do you receive love?
I think the easiest way. is you have to convince yourself that you're worthy of it, and then you can receive it. It has to be received thoughtfully. Because if you're worthy, you can receive it. Because if you don't think you're worthy, then you won't be able to receive it, no matter, even if it's some other kind of act. You'll think you're not worthy, and therefore you don't get to get it. It's. I think your question, the answer is in the question. In order to receive love, you have to receive it. It has to be two ways.
How do you receive love?
Interaction with my friends and what I care about, and try to stay focused on that which has meaning to me. I look for that which is consistent with the things that have meaning to me, and that's what I hold on to. You know, as a techie, I happen to know that we can read people's emotions as they walk up and down the street and know what to advertise to them. So the emotions of people is caught up with whether or not they love something or don't love something. But we're blurring the lines now. You know, those that paper you get when they print out the receipts, that little receipt paper, and it has this little powder on it, and it has whatever your amount is and so forth. That has been proven to alter gender uh, identity. It turns frogs into hermaphrodites or something. And the point is, nobody's studied it and studied the effect of the products we have in our environment on our gender issues and our sexual identity issues. Technically, the ways of people relating to each other sexually is two squared. You know, that's what it is. It's a number. And everybody on the planet either is is one step away from a same-sex encounter. Because the probability of anybody having a same-sex relationship is 1 in 2. Anybody. So anytime you have a 1 in 2 odds, you don't get to point the finger at everybody, because you could be one of those 1 in 2. So from my perspective, I'm heterosexual, but I have learned. I live in San Francisco. I've learned that people are people, and unless you accept them as people, then you screw up yourself and everybody around you. I, I don't I don't have all the opinions and the right answers about what the gender balance and whether it's homosexual or transgender and all that. I believe that people have to be themselves, and as long as you're not trying to destroy somebody else. I live in San Francisco. I see guys holding hands all the time together. I don't have to be mad at them. I can celebrate love in forms that I don't necessarily have to understand. You know, I have a friend who's transgender. Thank God they live in China, though. They live in Shanghai. We met here. But yeah, it's like, as soon as you're convinced you have all the answers, that's when you know you're wrong.
I like that. You're convinced you have all the answers, you know you're wrong. Wise words, wise words. Let's
Mhm.
move on to the last topic of the day, which is money. Tell us, what is money? What's going on with that?
It's at this particular point in human history, it's a tool of enslavement. You know, part of what I do is I teach my kids how to, grow their own food, how to learn how to build their own structures, and how to learn how to make their own furniture, so that they can have as little interaction with the requirements of other folk as as um, as necessary. So, functioning in the system now, you need money, but when money becomes your god, where we are now. That's why the Bible says it says that the love of money is the root of all evil, not the money itself, but it's the love, it's the things that we decide that we're willing to do for it. I mean, I don't know how your students would relate to this, but in America, three people have as much as 50% of the population combined. Three people. And America is a country of 330 million people. So just three people in America have as much as another, what, 160 million folk. And so you say, well, what's wrong with that? It's the balance. You mean to tell me that three people are worth as much as 160 million other people just themselves? Wow. Well, the thing about it is that if they think they're worth that much, those three people, then what are they willing to do to the other 170 million?
Deep thoughts. Deep thoughts. What does it mean to be human?
That's the key. That's the question we're going to have to answer. Well, mostly because the technology is taking away what it means to be human. You know, what do you care about? What do you love? I was thinking about that, and probably in part preparation for this our talk together. And when you look at where we are now, we don't really know what it means to be human. This technology is taking away so many choices. If it doesn't work a certain way, you got to watch out for this post. You got to watch out for this click, otherwise they'll compromise, and you got to have these ad wars and so forth. We're losing what it means to be human. To be human means caring about another human. Caring that society exists and continues to grow. Those are compassions. What are we connected to? Do you know that all the books, or almost all the books written before the 20th century, come from eras of thinking that the Earth was flat? It wasn't until Einstein in 1905 that he started talking about and the theory of relativity and proof that the Earth was round. And what happened? We never corrected all those books. you know that since the Earth was flat, if you kept going out there and you kept going this way, you'd fall off the end. And so what we've had is we have only struggles over the known area. Don't go out there where the bad guys are. You victimize the ones close to you because that's the known area. You see, we don't solve the oil crisis because that's the known area. We use that. In order to solve the energy crisis, you might have to look at fusion. You might have to look at solar in a different way, all the different things that you might not be as familiar with. But we like the up close and personal, the known area, and that's getting us in trouble now.
That actually reminds me
So
of
anyway, I don't know if I said anything that makes sense or that you would, but I said.
no. I mean, it makes perfect sense. You still there? I mean, is the connection okay? Lost him there.
There you
Can you hear me?
go. All right, now you were locked for a minute, but you're back.
Okay. Yeah, it was pretty
There was
clear.
a hitch in our thing. So can
Yeah.
you hear me? I think it's back now. It might be better now. So
Yeah. Okay.
all right.
No, I mean, I understood everything that you said. It's kind of like I just saw this movie last night, The Crows. Have you seen that movie?
What's it called?
The Crows.
What is
It's
it?
like The
No.
Crows. It's like an animation movie from DreamWorks.
Oh.
Basically, it's like that old saying, I think it's like something the allegory of the cave. You've heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
it's like what you're saying of people staying in their cave and two cave people go out of the cave and they see the world and they come back and they tell the cave people like, oh, there's actually more to the world than the cave, and then they get killed for it. So yeah, totally understand that. Any last words before we wrap it up for the youth?
And they get killed for it, right? So sometimes they kill. I am grateful to you. It was nice of you to ask me, and I think that what you're doing is important, and I'm glad you're working with young people and change the world, build a better world by designing wheels. So, thank you, Bob.
Of course. Thank you, Joseph. Before I forget, guys, if you guys are going through something, suicidal
There you are.
thoughts, yeah,
All right.
just before I forget,
I said my last words. You want me to say them again?
yeah, actually, can you repeat that? I'll cut it back in.
What you're doing is important. They don't care about our kids. You have to care for them, and your exhibiting care for them matters.
You got to care about the kids.
Before you can
Absolutely,
teach them,
absolutely.
because more is caught than is taught.
More is caught than is taught. There we go, guys. There we go. There we go. All right. Well, before I forget, for the kids out there, for anyone listening, if you are going through some depression or some suicidal thoughts, and you do need someone to talk to, feel free to text home to 741-741. That is a national hotline. Someone is always going to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And all I ask is that if you're feeling generous, that you do consider supporting the community hotline. And we will catch you guys on the next show. Thank you, Joseph. See you
Thank you.
later.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Bob. Take care. Peace out.